Portuguese has many fundamentals that are simple to understand after learning its basics. Basic words and phrases in Portuguese include question words, personal pronouns, weekdays, months, time words, greetings and farewells, and numbers. Question words in Portuguese are known as interrogative words that cannot be answered by simply saying yes or no, or in Portuguese, sim, no. What is o quê? Who is quem? Where is onde? When is quando? How is como? Why is por quê? The word for which can also be used as what, and it can be plural. Qual? Quais? The word for how much or how many is affected by gender and number. Quanto, masculine singular. Quantos, masculine plural. Quanta, feminine singular. Quantas, feminine plural. These questions specify the context of a sentence and indicate how the receiver of a question should respond. When using the words in context, Portuguese doesn't change the word order, because there is no auxiliary verb like in English. Then, Portuguese has personal subject pronouns that are mainly used for emphasis, because the language omits them due to verb conjugations. Such pronouns are replacements for proper names of people. I is eu. You is você. He is ele. She is ela. We is nós. You all is vocês. They masculine is eles. They feminine is elas. As we can see, Portuguese has many nuances with the pronouns. 1. There is no pronoun for it. 2. Nós has an accent to distinguish the pronoun from the word nós, without the accent, which means us. To avoid confusion, Portuguese uses an accent to separate words that are spelled the same but mean different things. 3. Eu doesn't need to be capitalized like in English, unless it's the first word in a sentence. 4. The pronoun for they is affected by gender. After understanding these nuances, one pronoun needs to be explained on its own, and that is você. In this pronoun chart, você means you in Brazilian Portuguese, because in this dialect, it's the standard for you. It's also generally neutral, because it can be used formally and informally, and it can be heard almost everywhere in Brazil. However, in Portugal, você has a different function, which can make it sound formal, distant, or even rude, depending on the region and context. Because of this phenomenon, European Portuguese uses a different pronoun, tu. Tu is common among friends, family, and peers, so it's used more within informal settings. For formal settings, native speakers generally avoid using você, even though it means you. Alternatively, the dialect prefers using phrases like o senhor, a senhora. These words are used more formally, with elders, strangers, and professionals. By learning this difference, it's possible to pinpoint when to use each pronoun in which context, but grammatically, the pronouns follow different conjugations, because tu uses second-person verb endings in European Portuguese. In most of Brazil, these forms are rare in everyday speech, so instead, the Brazilian dialect uses você with third-person verb endings. In other words, the dialect uses você for you formally and informally, but it behaves like a third-person subject. Since the focus of this guide is on Brazilian Portuguese, I recommend learning the pronoun você. It's widely used by many speakers and simplifies learning because você, ele, and ela all share the same verb forms. Still, the guide will also have conjugations of tu for those who want to use the European dialect. After learning personal pronouns, we can see the weekdays in Portuguese. Segunda-feira, terça-feira, quarta-feira, quinta-feira, sexta-feira, sábado, domingo. English capitalizes the words, but Portuguese doesn't, unless it's the first word in a sentence. The meaning of the words is quite interesting, because the weekdays are literally named after their position in the week, tracing their origins back to religious traditions. For instance, segunda-feira literally means second fair, or the second day. In daily conversation, the word feira is often dropped, so it's common to hear segunda and other days by themselves. Then, Portuguese has the months. Janeiro, fevereiro, março, abril, maio, junho, julho, agosto, setembro, outubro, novembro, dezembro. Months are also not capitalized, unless they're the first word in a sentence. Then, Portuguese has common time words, like hoje, ontem, amanhã, agora, depois, antes, sempre, nunca, às vezes, já, ainda, logo. At the same time, we can see parts of the day. Manhã, tarde, noite. Then, Portuguese has greetings and farewells. These phrases can be useful when speaking the language and meeting new people. Common greetings are olá, oi, bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, tudo bem, como vai, prazer. To respond to some questions, we can say tudo bem, muito bem, estou bem. As a note, prazer translates to pleasure, but as a greeting, it means nice to meet you. Common farewells are tchau, até logo, até amanhã, até mais, boa noite. Finally, Portuguese has cardinal numbers that are spelled and pronounced like this: zero, dois, três, quatro, cinco, seis, sete, oito, nove, dez. Numbers past dez are once, doce, trece, catorce, European, or catorce, Brazilian, quince, dezesseis, dezessete, dezoito, dezenove, vinte. The numbers once, doce, trece, catorce, and quince all end in se, but later the tense numbers become jeze and receive the ones numbers as is. Numbers past vince are trinta, quarenta, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. When combining tens numbers with ones numbers, the spelling uses e, meaning and, to join the numbers, like 21, 21, 35, 35, 48, 48, 99, 99. Numbers 100 and beyond are cem, mil, and milhão. At last, Portuguese has ordinal numbers that function like adjectives, so they agree in gender and number with the noun they describe. Primeiro, primeira. Segundo, segunda. Terceiro, terceira. Quarto, quarta. Quinto, quinta. Sesto, sesta. Sétimo, sétima. Oitavo, oitava. Nono, nona. Décimo, décima. As a note, quarto can also mean room. Listing numbers past that is unnecessary, because Portuguese often uses cardinal numbers where English prefers ordinals. As a fun observation, Portuguese weekdays come from the ordinal numbers that we just saw. Segunda, terça, quarta, quinta, sexta. The words have feminine endings because feira is a feminine word. Historically, these were the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth days of the liturgical week, and this is why they look like ordinal numbers. Overall, these are basic words, phrases, and fundamentals in Portuguese.